Do you crave better self-esteem and confidence, but struggle to silence your anxiety, fears, and insecurities? If so, welcome to the sisterhood of fellow travelers on the path to reclaiming their self-confidence and happiness. I'm Jennifer DeBellis, award-winning author, speaker, and assault survivor. I spent the past few decades helping young women like you overcome fear, self-doubt, and trauma to reclaim their joy and self-worth. I cannot wait to share the secrets I learned on my own healing journey and help you restore your inner warrior as I show you the skills and tools you need to save your own broken world. If you're ready to empower your inner warrior to overcome fear, doubt, and anxiety, turn off those distractions and tune in to this episode. Last episode, we gained a better understanding of our inner and external wilderness and how to adapt our survival guide and skills that lead us on that path to happiness and fulfillment. Today's episode explores how to get back on track when the path is overshadowed with foggy thoughts and visions caused by misinformation, missing information, and interpretation of details. This is a chronic topic that has been resurfacing in my life lately. So much so, I find myself not only dealing with it personally, it is a recurrent theme in my teaching and coaching lives lately. If this topic speaks to you also, know that you're in good company. I cannot wait to share tested strategies with you that will guide you on your own journey to an improved quality of life. Believe me when I tell you that you really do hold the power to retrain your perspective and decrease your fear, doubt, dread, and anxiety that fuels these emotions. In this episode, you'll hear about the effects of a warped perspective in some of my recent personal and professional interactions. You'll gain a better understanding of how perspective works for multiple viewpoints and learn some tested strategies for recalibrating how you view and respond to situations and interactions. If you're ready to boldly step into a life of happiness and confidence, turn off those distractions running in the background so you can supercharge your inner healing journey with this next episode. And welcome back to all of my listeners already walking with me down this restoration path. So let's talk for a minute about perspective and how complex it is when it comes to looking at it from many vantage points. So obviously, perspective is how something is viewed. It's informed by focus, vantage point, and also biases. Witnesses at a crime scene are a great example of this. So an investigator can come and take several witness statements at a crime scene, whether it's a murder or somebody gets hurt or robbed or a car accident. And depending on our vantage point, our biases, what our focus is or what our focus isn't in that particular time of impact or a time when the crime actually takes place, will impact what we have to say about it, what we remember, how we judge that situation, and it can be completely unrelated to the actual details of the event. When I think about this concept, I'm also reminded of horses and how when they are used for particular activities, they have blinders on. So if you go to a city where you can go on a horse-drawn carriage ride, you'll see those blinders on the horse. And these blinders are put on the horse because horses are really easily distracted. They want to know what's going on, not just because they feel like maybe they might be in harm, but they're just fascinated by human activity. And so they're naturally going to be looking around. They have very good eyesight, so their peripheral is far superior to human peripheral vision. And so when those blinders come on and all of a sudden they take away that peripheral view and it's like, just focus on what's ahead here, there's nothing to see over here, it keeps them more focused on the task at hand. And it also reduces how they'll get spooked, because they also do get spooked easily by, sudden movements off in the distance. And so they can still rely on their other senses as well. I just wrapped up my summer teaching gig, and I had a really challenging few weeks with some of my student writers and a lot of interesting interactions that particularly pertain to instances of perspective and how perspective works in writing, but also how perspective works in our everyday interactions, and how those everyday interactions can also impact how our perception kind of fools us, how it gets us thinking about the wrong things or focused on the wrong things. And then that paranoia starts to kick in, and
our judgment is altered then by that paranoia or those missed cues that cause us to have bad judgment. So I started off the week recently with one of my camp groups with day one coming to an end and learning that a couple parents had issues with my form of teaching. And this, I've been teaching for decades, but particularly I've been teaching for this particular camp for 13 years. So this is my 14th summer. I've never had anybody complain about my teaching to this level, and I was blindsided. I was like, wow, I thought this day went kind of well. My first day of camp, regardless of the age group, I spend a lot of time scaffolding smaller skills, pre-writing skills, things that we can continue to draw upon in the days to come. Not only do they draw upon them on day one, but they can draw upon them for all different types of things that we're doing. And, this is just my style of teaching. I do it with all different types of classes. And so when I got that message and I started that dialogue, I was, being told I need to follow the book. And a lot of the stuff in the book that we use are prompts that I personally made up or I've altered. And I was following the prompts in the book with a twist. And there were layers of confusion with how these parents reacted to what their kids were doing at writing camp. And, the first one was um, why they wanted their kid to do the exact same things that they had done in prior camps, even though they were several years older than the last time I'd had them. I'd actually had these students before as writing students. And so I always try to adapt them and give alternate prompts. And so anyhow, I was really like, okay, how am I going to come back? And at first I was pissed. I was like, you're not a writer. You're coming in and telling me how I have to teach these kids. Like, you're not trusting me. I'm an expert. This is what I do for a living. And camp is supposed to also be fun. So I'm trying to bring it down to their level, trying to make it fun. And now I have this pressure that I have to follow the book and that these parents are going to be checking the workbook as if they know what the book is and then grading me and assessing me. And so at first I was just like, I was pissed and I was just like, I don't even want to do this anymore. I have 4 more days to go in and I don't even want to do this anymore. You've just sucked all the joy out. This is what I also write with my students. And I felt defeated and I felt very robbed. And I felt like I was going to rob them. So I had to like get alone, meditate, look at the different perspectives, and think about what my boss was saying to me. Like, she was like, I hated even having to say these things to you. But, these parents are like, well, if we can't, have it our way, we want our money back and we don't give refunds. But it was like that really threatening dialogue was really alarming to me. And it's a reason why I don't teach in secondary education is because I don't want to deal with parents like that. I had to sit back and I had to reflect on, okay, is there something that I can take a correction on? Or is there something that I can improve on or come back to some of the roots, the basics, which I didn't really have full context of exactly what they meant and exactly what they wanted. But I also had all of these other students who some of them, this was their experience for the first time. And these are more advanced writers that I didn't want to rob them of the experience either, not just in the writing prompts that I was going to give them in the pre-writing and all these different writerly life activities. I didn't want to rob them of the experience of working with me the way that I thrive the best. And so I had to sit there and think about the different perspectives of everybody involved and how could I, meet all of these different things, not necessarily make everybody happy. That's not the way I want to look at it. It was, how can I still be a good teacher and create a good experience that they walk away with much more than they bargained for, that's going to change their lives and change the way that they approach and view writing forever. That's one of the things that is really important to me as a teacher. So the students were getting different things out of the workshop, and that that was satisfying to me. But one of the things that happened that really put a drain on the whole week is when I came back on Tuesday, I kind of had a little bit of paranoia about which other students may not be happy with my job performance, which was a really weird thing to be thinking about in these summer camps. But I started thinking about like, oh my gosh, are there other students who have a problem with me? Like I kind of knew, who the students were who did have a problem or whose parents had a problem. I'm not sure if they went home and complained or if their parents just looked at their notebooks. I don't know. And to be honest, I don't care. It just seems like really petty stuff. So I don't care. But I came back in, and there were a couple of students who had shown an interest in my writing life the first day. And then the second day, I kind of caught them poking fun at something about me, and I started internalizing that. And so now, of course, these two uh, teenagers are like, constantly leaning over and talking to each other. And again, it's camp, so I don't care. It's not like they were being like super obnoxious or anything. But it made me really self-conscious. And I was completely misreading these students who did not have a problem with me. And it was all week long. And I was just felt really just horrible. It was just this overshadowing thing. And I had a really hard time, putting it out of the way. Like I didn't let it affect my teaching and I didn't let it affect how I was giving these student writers an exceptional value and an enjoyable week at camp. But internally, I was miserable. And it was the first time ever that I felt that way, that I just really felt like, people didn't appreciate just what I had to offer, didn't trust my own process. And that was very frustrating, but it made me misread a lot of different things. And it led to really interesting developments, which I'm going to put on the back burner for a second, because I want to also talk about some things that I covered throughout the week that were really infiltrating my meditations on perspective, because I knew I wanted to talk about it on the podcast here. So in my workshop, I was doing some mini lessons on irony and how perspective informs judgment. And obviously you start with the easiest one, which is things they already learned in their other academic setting, which is dramatic irony. And when the audience is aware of things and the characters are not aware of things. And then you have this concept of the unreliable narrator, when, the info that we are given is unknowingly misleading us. And whether the narrator means to do it or not, there's lots of different types of unreliable narrators. There's those who are intentionally misleading us, compulsive lying, or just trying to get us to see a particular, again, those horse blinders are on, just trying to get us to see something in particular, or they are not completely right in their mind. And so therefore we're getting a lot of disjointed and inaccurate information. There's also situational irony when the outcome is different from what is expected. And then there's what I have coined as blinders irony, which is the inverse of dramatic irony. There really isn't a term for it, but I think of it like this blinders irony. It's like slasher horror movies or psychological thrillers use this type of irony where the blinders are put on the characters or the individuals that are in the scene where they don't know everything that's going on over here in the peripheral. They don't know that trouble's lurking in the bushes. They have the blinders on and they're only given limited information. And so the irony is on them. And often it's situational because the outcome is different than what they expected because they had to make judgments on the limited bunch of information that they had at their disposal. Several different interesting things happened at the camp. One of the days we were on a tour, I work in a historical mansion and museum. It's one of the top 3 castles in our nation, Recall. And so I am always in this amazing atmosphere during the summer camps, touring around, and there's all this, extraordinary architecture. And one of the sculptures outside in the porch is a compass, and it has some caricatures carved into it. But the compass, is obviously north, south, east, and west. It has the different letters on it. And 3 of the students were like, hey, Miss Jennifer, this is wrong. This compass is wrong. And, my first response was, I highly doubt that the compass is wrong. And then I started looking at what they were trying to say. They were like, the E and the W are reversed. It's supposed to be the other way around. And so then, of course, right away, I take it all in. Okay, I'm trying to say, like, this is my perspective. I can see where they're getting that. And then I take it all in very quickly. I notice that the N is the thing that's closest to us. So I'm like, come here. So I invite them. I don't just tell them, I invite them to change where they're standing. because again, I want them to see this very thing we have been talking about in class. I want them to see it in real time so that now it clicks. They have the visual, it clicks, and they have the experience. And as soon as I brought them around and I said, here, now when you look at it from this way, is it right? And they were like, right, their minds were blown. And it was an amazing experience because it brought everything full circle for them, but it also gave us this kind of like grounded point that we could keep pointing back to for the rest of the week, talking about how you just need to change the perspective. So even in your stories and in your poetry, if you just change the perspective of the different characters involved or the narrator, you've got the different characters in the scene, and we're talking about like limited types of point of view or an omniscient point of view. And it's like this God's all-seeing eye that sees everything. Even that narrator isn't necessarily going to give us every single talking point. And then how do you tell the story from the different perspectives? And can you use these really interesting perspectives to kind of create these different points of irony? So this compass example really gave us this great talking point to keep pointing back to. And it was this very tangible thing for them. Now, fast forward to the end of the week. It's parent reading day, and the parents start filing in. And right away, I can see one of the parents who had a big issue with me. And despite me changing everything up and complying with what they demanded, they still had a scowl on their face. They were, arms were crossed. They wanted me to know they couldn't stand me. And again, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to let this get to me. I'm not going to internalize this because it will impact how I interact with the students now as I MC and facilitate the student reading. And I don't want that. And so so I had to start getting a different perspective and getting into that mindset. And then a parent walked in and introduced herself to me and immediately started praising so many things. And it was, first of all, I just want to say sometimes if you just keep being your amazing self, don't let somebody shake you down. You think about it, you recalibrate, you think about it, you come to terms with some things, and then you don't let anybody stop you from your destiny. I know this is a shorter version because it's only a week, but you don't let anybody come in and snuff out your light, snuff out your destiny, thwart your forward motion. Here, I have this amazing experience where, some of these parents who were the ones complaining are now present while this other parent is in real time telling me all of these amazing things that her daughter came home and told her. And I was blown away. It's wonderful when you hear people compliment you and talk about things and then take an interest. I hear you're doing these particular things. And she starts saying, I hear that you're writing a children's book. My daughter wants to write a children's book also. So does her friend. I hear you authored a book and it's being turned into a movie. And I mean, you're doing all these incredible things. And so here I have this opportunity to where all these parents are walking in and I am talking very enthusiastically to a parent who is super supportive of my journey and talking about how, oh my gosh, I also heard you're doing this new podcast and how do I find it? And I am going to follow you and all these just complimentary things. And it was just one of those moments where you can't script that. You can't make that up. It just happens. If you just keep being yourself, the universe, God will give you those opportunities to redeem yourself in the eyes of people who, right, wish you harm or don't appreciate the same things. And it doesn't always happen where you get to be present. But in this case, I think God and the universe knew, like, I needed a little reassurance that you're killing it in your own way. And again, like I'm teaching, high school writers, there are unlimited ways that they can be inspired and improve and enhance their writing life. So it was almost like it's hard to mess that up. It's hard to mess that up if you come in as a much more advanced writer who typically works with much more advanced writers, to not be able to come in and give them something on so many levels, time after time, thing after thing, that's going to enhance their writing life. And so, but I needed that. I needed that reassurance, and it felt really good. And the timing was perfect for me. And, who doesn't like to be vindicated in front of the very people who were like, you suck. One of the things, I walked away from this experience and I was talking to my colleague because we had been talking all week, and teenagers are hard and sometimes they're cranky and they're boneheads, and you walk away thinking, well, I don't know, did they Did they not like me, or did they not like what we were doing today? Or are they just being themselves? They're just, cranky teenagers. And then when we started reevaluating and talking, I was like, maybe I'm the bonehead. Maybe I'm the cranky teenager who was misreading it, or misreading things to such a level where my own biases and, anxiety and fears and doubts and dread of, having to deal with that type of, criticism was clouding my judgment and was making me misread things for days. For days, I was misreading it. And that dread just kept compounding and compounding until I was like, oh my God, it's Friday. It's this, as soon as we get through this day. And then that, wonderful experience happened. And then here I am now reflecting on it. And we're laughing. My colleague and I are laughing like, oh my God, did I ever get that wrong? And I had the opportunity too, because I wasn't like, oh, blah, 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 like being super negative, but I was sharing it with her on a daily basis, kind of like for support, but also we were a team. And, I was like, I just want to make sure like you understand what the changes I'm making and what I'm trying to do here. And I hope I'm coming across this in this way. And gosh, I'm really frustrated because I feel like I'm not getting through to these students. And so now here we are talking about, okay, yeah, how many times are we the one when we think about it? When we get quiet or we go through the experience and now we're able to have all these different angles of perspective to say, okay, maybe we're the one. Maybe we are the bonehead here in this equation. This chronic perspective topic has been also coming up with some of my coaching students recently. I have a particular student who is struggling with a friend group where some things are happening that are causing her to be alienated and left out of things. And I mentioned this, I don't know, last episode or maybe a couple episodes ago about how to navigate that and how to go through the process of grieving through certain things when you need to grieve those things. And so I don't want to digress into that, but I want to bring it up because I want to drill into the exercise of role playing and listing things as one of the strategies that I've been working with this particular student on in order to navigate these feelings of rejection and not being accepted, which is a huge thing. This is a huge topic that we're going to probably, talk about very often from week to week because it's big for all of us. It's a huge catalyst that drives our anxiety when we're going to different, functions or different events and having different experiences when we're socially engaging this fear of rejection or the very real and present rejection. It's not a fear, it's a reality of rejection and not being accepted. And how do we navigate those spaces? How do we know what spaces we shouldn't be going into anymore? What strategies should we bring for the situations where we can't not go or that we really want to be at? There's that desire of really wanting to be at certain places and, it's not necessarily reciprocated. That's that topic I've been talking about. But then when I was talking with this student, there are exercises that you can do to role play and to list things. And so what I mean by role play is like not, get into the character and talk through the dialogue. I mean to get into the thinking. So if you think about like, if you can make a list, kind of go through some of the details of the interactions or the details of the experience, or the details of your relationship with these individuals, then you can get at some of their motives, or you can also get at some of the details that help you make a more informed judgment of the situation. Like maybe you are misreading it, or maybe you're missing information that you need in order to make the most informed decision that you can make. Maybe you're reading it entirely right. I'm not trying to say always give people the benefit of the doubt. They're never going to be the one who's doing you wrong, or they're not the ones who are, doing these things that you think that they are doing to you. Don't gaslight yourself. I'm saying go through the thinking process so that you understand it and see it fully, like that God-seeing eye, trying to recreate something so that you have the fullest perspective that you can have to then see it more clearly, and then you can assess it more clearly, and then you can make a better informed judgment of the situation. And I'm kind of basing this advice in this coaching session off of some of my own recent experiences with, interactions with others. And one in particular was something that I was able to bring over to a recent session, was one that I was dealing with someone who's in my regular life who I would call or consider an unreliable narrator. And, interactions with this individual are often very taxing, and they wreak havoc in every aspect of my life with other interactions and other relationships that I have. And in this particular instance, there was this whole laundry list of things that didn't quite happen the way that she said they happened, or didn't happen at all. And it was just one thing after the other after the other. And I, of course, as I'm listening, I'm trying to resist just being completely defensive. I'm trying to be, like apologetic. And I'm sorry if that's how I came across. That's not at all what I even thought our interaction was, going like. And uh, you know, the whole time I was just continually being filled with fear and dread and just all of these doubts, because I know the damage that's far reaching from this just one little interaction that's probably already been set into motion. And it started to actually give me anxiety. It made me sick to my stomach. So here I'm somewhere where I'm supposed to be eating, and I'm like, okay, the thought of eating food, no way, I'm not doing it. And, now my head is killing me, and I'm just completely filled with dread. And I'm kind of blindsided again. I'm like, it just kind of hit me. And, when I got away from it and I thought about, well, this is kind of you know, typical behavior from this individual, I still in the moment, I don't know why, walking in, I was just blindsided by it. And I was kind of reminded about this chronic pattern that has existed in relationships with this particular individual and this circle of individuals connected to us. And I was reminded of something a very close friend of mine said to me years ago when things were really, really bad at one time. I came back from something and I called her crying because I just felt really attacked by something. And I was sharing with her the things that were said to me, and they were attacking words. And my friend was reassuring me, you are not that. You are totally rocking this particular area of your life. And I'm really impressed. I couldn't do half as well as you did. And, she was saying these things encouragingly. And I'm sure she meant, sincerely meant what she was saying. But she gave me this analogy, and it just stuck with me. And it's something that I draw upon, and I continue to use it with students and with my loved ones. And I continue to use it in my own life. And, she said, when people slander your name or people say negative things about you for whatever reason, whether they're jealous or they're just spiteful or they just don't like you or they are trying to build themselves up by building you down and all the other things. I'm not even going to get into that because it doesn't really matter why somebody's doing something awful to you. They're doing it, and there are consequences of those actions, and those consequences affect you. And she just said, look, when you get an opportunity to give voice to it, if somebody gives you that opportunity, of course, go ahead and give your side of it. You're not supposed to clam up. You're not supposed to, not speak. And if you want to call that individual and call them out on that or have that conversation, by all means do. But you already know that this is a chronic pattern, and the conversations on the same level that you've had with these individuals over and over and over again haven't stopped the situation. This is the tone and the atmosphere that it is consistently with these individuals. So you have to decide that you're not going to get up on the table and tap dance and tell people this is who I am and talk and tell people. You have to live your life in such a way that you just show people. You show people that you are not this person that they said you did this or you said that. You're not that person. And the people who care about you and who really know and understand you and take the time to know and understand you are going to see that, even if it takes time. They're going to see that character play out. And the people who don't really care about you or don't want to see you in that light because they are like, I am not changing my way. And again, it could go back to they have resentment towards you. They're competing with you. They don't want to see you succeed or surpass them or whatever the list of things are, the reasons. They're never going to see you in that light. They can't. Their survival depends on not seeing you in that light. So the people who don't care don't matter. They don't matter in your larger scheme of things because you're showing them the proof that you are not this individual that does and acts this particular way and says these particular things, and yet they're refusing to see it. So they're not your people. They're not the people who you are trying to impress and trying to show, hey, I'm a good person. I'm worthy of having these trustworthy, value driven relationships. And so I love this advice, the show don't tell kind of advice. It speaks to me because as a writer, we're constantly saying we have to show our readers and our listeners, not tell them. Every instance that we can, we need to show rather than tell. And this writing advice kind of reminds me of other types of higher ed lessons that I deliver to classes. This lesson concept also reminds me of some of the lessons that I've done in different classes in my higher ed situations, which I did spend a decade in higher education classrooms teaching different critical writing approaches to all different levels of writing. Something that I do for multiple different types of assignments and activities is this exploring multiple perspectives in order to gain insights in the full picture. And I don't care if I'm having students do an evaluation essay or a research essay or a cause and effect essay. It doesn't matter what type of an essay. I'm constantly telling them they need to bring in multiple sources, and these need to be credible sources, and they need to be from differing perspectives. So they need to find people in the same topic who are talking about it or representing different points of view and different perspectives. They're from different camps of thinking. That's super important. It's necessary for you to explore these things, to make informed judgments, and to interpret the situation properly. There's no way to do it. And it kind of reminds me of how our mass media situation is right now. You can't watch news. I don't care what network. There is no such thing as a neutral network. There's no 60 Minutes anymore. I remember 60 Minutes. I was a little kid when 60 Minutes would be playing in the background when I'd be at my grandparents'. And Walter Cronkite would say, like he would give you the information and he would just trust that families would sit around after dinner or at the dinner table and they would talk about these really important world and local news items. And they would make informed judgments based on their own values and beliefs and morals and motives and what do they want out of life. And people weren't idiots, and people aren't idiots now, but we're treated like we have to have blinders on. We get information where it's like you only need this little bit of information. That's all you need to make a sound judgment. And we'll even tell you don't even need to make the judgment. We'll tell you what the judgment is, and you just follow suit. And that is frightening. That is alarming because that is not how it works at all. And, so like if you have a breaking news item and you watch it or you learn about it from your favorite network, it's like, okay, what are other networks saying about it? You should be seeking that information so that you're gaining all this perspective. You may come at the end and share the beliefs and values of the network that's your go-to network because maybe they're your same political party, for instance, that's behind it, or they're your same education level. And you have the same sensibilities and the same ways of seeing the world and same value system and all those other things that go into sharing someone else's point of view. But it's very hard to come by that because you have to keep going to multiple sources to get it. And it's very hard to sift out all the biases and things in order to just get at the details, especially when half of the details are missing because they don't feel like they're necessary. And let me tell you, some of those details are missing because they know that it will skew your judgment. Again, the blinders. It's that blinders irony where if I don't show you what's going on over here, you're going to make this judgment exactly like I hope you'll make this judgment so that you're on my team. You think just like I think. And then you're out there, you're not really thinking at all for yourself. You haven't had an original thought on it yet. You're thinking what they told you to think. And, you know, that's not what it means to step out of your own viewpoint. So, yes, we are supposed to step out of our own viewpoint to see and assess how others perceive things, but we're not supposed to not have a viewpoint or know how to come up with our own viewpoint at any given time during the exchange. We are supposed to see how several people are. It's like living with other individuals. You get in an argument or something happens, and you're hopefully talking with each other and exchanging your views and your opinions and your hurts and your concerns and what you expect out of this situation, or what expectations were thwarted, or what boundaries were breached, and all these different things that happen. You can't live with other people without going through some of these things, or you can live together very miserably. So, yes, you can live together, but it's very hard to live in any type of harmony and get along more than you don't get along. It's very hard. I get it. Marriage is hard. Relationships with raising kids are hard, no matter what age they are. But these are the types of things that have to happen in order to coexist. You have to be able to see things from different perspectives and viewpoints. How are you going to understand somebody else if you're always looking at them and what they're saying and putting it just through your filter? You'll never understand them. It's like speaking two different languages. You have to be able to translate what they're saying into their dialect to understand what they're saying, and then be like, okay, so when this person acts this way or says this particular thing, you start to gain an understanding of their perspective. Again, you don't have to agree with it, but we're not talking about whether or not you agree with the perspective. We're talking about how much of your own intelligence is involved in seeing things. How are you seeing things? How are you equipping yourself with the advantage of seeing things from multiple perspectives? It really is an advantage, this vantage point. It helps us understand these other value systems, beliefs, and motives. Just think about any pressing topic that's out there. I'm not going to get into them here because I don't want to turn this into a political playground. But if you just pick something that's a really hot topic, if you start to, again, break it down and try to see it from these different points of view, you may not agree or change your mind on it, but you may understand why that person is so adamant about their stance. And then you say, okay, I have to make room for their stance. Again, you don't have to become best friends with them. You don't even ever have to sway your beliefs to align with theirs 100%. But again, understanding it's going to help you navigate interactions if you have to interact with these individuals. Sometimes you work with these individuals. Sometimes they're in your family circle or in your friend circle. Maybe they're the spouse of your best friend or a close friend. And it's like, you can't just always be, oh, we're only going to go out with just the two of us and not have that relationship that maybe you're at their house and you have to deal with the spouse that you're like, oh my God, they just don't see the world the same way. I can't with them. You have to find that common ground and understanding them so that you're less irritated with them and just be like, let them be them, when you can. Obviously, some people are very abrasive and very insulting, and that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to say you need to dismiss people who are misbehaving or, behaving badly. But a lot of times you're just interacting with people and you're also dreading what might come out of their mouth because maybe some of those things don't align with what you believe or what you see as, how things should go. But the other thing that gaining this larger perspective does is it makes you effective at problem solving, which is why I bring it into my higher ed classrooms and why I also bring it into my coaching sessions with my students who are trying to work some of these things out in their own life. You have to get good at problem solving. You have to have a whole arsenal of tools and strategies for doing that. You have to rely on communication, and communication doesn't always mean you're going to sit down and talk with people. Communication can be you looking back at someone's behavior, some things that they said, how things transpired, really dissecting previous interactions, just like I did with that individual when I left. I had to get back and get quiet and meditate and think about this whole perspective and point of view and all these different things, and then also put it against prior experiences with that individual to really get at, like, okay, how should I be looking at this? How should I proceed moving forward? Do I do this? Do I do that? And it really helped me to be able to look at how the prior communication went. How did it go when I did confront or go to the other individuals and try to create that dialogue? Did it lead me anywhere productive? Didn't it? You know, so I'm relying on a different viewpoint of communication to say, how has communication gone in the past? How was this stuff delivered to me in that real-time instance? How was I being received if I'm reading this person's body language and, knowing again, past communications and past interactions that it was not being received. It wasn't being received. And how can I take all of these things and still myself operate in a mode of compassion? Because again, I'm at another function that isn't about me, isn't about this individual. It's about the person we came to celebrate. And so now, how do I navigate, keep this kind of spirit of compassion, and also understand where this person's coming from, and their own mental struggles are not me. And even though I'm a target right now of something, it's not me. I'm not. And being able to separate that, going through all of these problem solving skills and doing all this assessment and relying on, past experiences and bringing all that up and putting it all side by side, that is how we do this. We have to take all of those things. And even if maybe you don't have a chronic pattern with the same individual, you have experiences, I know you do, because the universe will keep sending that same problematic situation and person to you over and over and over again until you learn the lesson. Period. There's the bad news. So the good news is that you can keep going through these things and learn the lesson. And I will say there are lessons, plural. You will learn the lessons which make your character better and make your problem solving skills better and make them better in real time. Like if I look back just even 10 years ago, I did not have the same powerful skills that I have now that I can operate in real time, or at least get to a place of compassion to get me through an interaction with someone until I can get alone with myself and then really kind of look at everything and assess it. And I mean, I might not be able to just sit in one sitting. Like it took me a couple days to defragment from this into this particular interaction, as I'm also talking to this coaching student about a kind of similar situation and trying to give them good advice while I'm kind of going through the raw experience myself. But isn't that sometimes how God works? He sends you into an experience to mentor to someone else in the very area that you are trying to get yourself through. And it's really testing your skills and testing your strategies in real time and also making it very fresh on your mind to then be able to pass on to somebody else. And it might not happen for you every single time, but I notice that's something, a pattern in my own life, that it tends to be something that I'm working on, or if I wasn't working on it, it's suddenly back in my life and I'm like, dear God, why am I stuck in this, repeating this particular thing? And then all of a sudden I'm being used to help somebody else through that thing. And then I'm like, okay, not that I'm grateful or happy for this, but I understand the process here. But the other thing that all comes into alignment here when we start to recalibrate that perspective and giving ourselves the expanded perspective and going through all these processes and steps of, just assessing and trying to make the most informed judgment we can with the available information that we're able to collect, is that it gives us a peace of mind. And that's how we get closure on things. We get this type of closure where you recognize, I can't change these people. I can't change the situations. First of all, they've already happened. What can I do to, moving forward? What can I do to have better interactions and better relationships with these individuals moving forward? Or again, just better experiences. Sometimes it's not about relationships. It's just about like the one and done experience. How can I have, a better experience by entering it with this open mind to be seeking, multiple perspectives. And sometimes you'll have those instances of being able to ask questions of other individuals so that you're gaining that intel and you're gaining that information and all the, the details that you need to make an informed judgment. That's what having that kind of all-seeing God eye overhead, which we can only hope to get something close to that. You're not going to get all the information, and your bias is still going to get in the way. Like, we are flawed individuals. Our biases are still going to get in the way. And that bias is still going to cloud how we see and how we hear, and then how we translate the information and then remember it in our head. So, another practice is to try to quiet our bias while we're going through situations, especially while we're going through a situation with someone who fits the bias. And they're so easy to dismiss, or they're so easy to discredit or not believe, or just be like, I don't even care. This isn't even worth my energy, because right, the bias is there. We see them as, like they're not my people or whatever, but sometimes we can't act that way. If it's our kids or our kids' friends or a colleague, or, like a situation where we're like, that's not an option for us. We've got to get our own bias out of the way so that we can more clearly see and make that judgment. And again, have that peace of mind to know that we did everything that we could to be informed and to make that good judgment call. So I read an interesting analogy the other day while I was meditating on all these things the last like week and a half. And I have not been able to stop thinking about it ever since. And it really applies to this. So what I read isn't something that I heard for the first time. It's just something that I haven't heard in a long time. And of course, it's very applicable to what I've been meditating on right now. And it is the story about how to trap monkeys, they used to drill holes in coconuts just big enough for the monkey to slip their open hand into. And then once they grabbed the soft, sweet rice, they would make a fist, and then they couldn't pull their hand free. And so the monkeys that they were able to catch were the ones whose hands were stuck in the coconuts, because they wouldn't let go, because they, in their mind, were convinced that that was the only food source, even though that they've known through experience after experience, like how abundant the food is in the jungle. They still have in their mind, I came for this food, and they wouldn't let go. They couldn't see beyond that one instance. And how similar that is to us is that we get our grip on something, even the way we see things, because we have these desires, because we want particular things. We have this hunger for things. And so we put our fist around it and we don't let go. And because we don't let go, we are in our own trap. It's a trap. We're in our own trap. And we have also other experiences to know that that's not the only food source. And the bummer is a lot of times we're holding really tight to that thing we crave the most, because it's something we really desire getting. And so not getting it, letting go of that, right, is devastating. It's a devastating thought to think about, like, I really want that thing. So when we come back to talking about, having a different expanded perspective on these instances of rejection and not being accepted, and the fears, the real and perceived fears and doubts and dread and the anxiety and all those things that, kill our value and kill our confidence and really, diminish our light and our luster, is this, these things that we're holding on to. But the thing is that the world is full of this food. The world is full of these instances. And the moment we let go of them is the moment that we're open to receiving it. So when we think about, like, what are we after when we're after this being accepted and, like not being rejected or not being abandoned, we're after this love, right? We want this love. We want this reception. And maybe we want it from individuals who typically we should be getting it from, but we aren't. Just open that hand, relax the fist, and then you open yourself up to receive it in different new ways that you just didn't even realize were there, maybe. Opposite of the rice, I want you to consider how these concepts work in times of combat, because here we are talking about how to restore that inner warrior. So when we talk about how to restore that inner warrior, then we're tasked with understanding kind of the enemy camp. We have to understand who we're fighting against, what the battle is against, in order to best react to it. When we explore and study the enemy camp, we really are rebuilding our confidence and self-esteem by empowering ourselves with the knowledge that we need to know what we're up against. And a lot of times that's the case, is we're up against things in our real lives, not just looking at the larger world around us, but every time we step out into a new day, we are faced with different challenges. Every time we have to interact with someone, it's a challenge. Even if we're just madly in love with that other person, it is a challenge. This person isn't a clone of us. There's going to be a moment where we don't see eye to eye on something, where we feel like maybe we misread something, and then it becomes a cycle, like I was talking about with the students, where you're misreading it and you think they're irritated with you and you think this and you think that, and then the next thing you know, you're like a hamster on the wheel, running and running and running around, chasing your own tail, and you're not even chasing the right thing. You're not even chasing the reality here. Ultimately, this type of transformation relies on strengthening our inner warrior skills as we confront the struggles and obstacles keeping us from living our best life. There's no other way around it. I know I keep using that warrior trope, but really, that's how we fight the battles every day of our lives. So this type of transformation relies on strengthening our inner warrior skills as we confront those struggles and obstacles that are keeping us from living our best life. I know I keep drawing upon this warrior theme, but I feel like every day is a battle as we go through our struggles. And, there's power in thinking of it that way. If we think about how we are the powerhouse, the person who is going in and rescuing our own world and fixing the things. And then that accountability keeps us going, but also not just the accountability, but the sense that we are able, and we are not only able, but we're tasked with that. We have to be good stewards of our own life. As much as it sucks to have to think about, like, I'm constantly at war in my head, and I'm constantly at war in all of my interactions, and trying to carve out a space for myself and trying to thrive as my best self and be accepted as myself. Yes, I know it can feel daunting, but if you really think about it and you come back and you look back and think about all of the battles that you win while you're using these skills and you're using these strategies, it can be very encouraging and empowering to see what you were able to accomplish in your own power. And of course, relying on outside help and relying on your spiritual life, but the acts that you actually do, when you take all of that stuff and you walk it out in real time and then see the fruit of your labor, it's a pretty amazing thing. It's very empowering, and it's also very cathartic. So the most extraordinary outcome here is when we do learn how to see things from various perspectives to then react as informed powerhouses in our own story. When we reset our approach to seeing things from multiple perspectives, we really do become a powerful force of nature.
Well, girl, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, don't forget to follow my channel and share it with girlfriends who also want to restore their self-worth and confidence. Also, if this podcast inspired you, consider leaving a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. And as you go through your day, may your empowered spirit, heart, and mind guide you. Catch new episodes every Tuesday and Friday. Ciao!